Alright, well, it looks like Verlisify is at it again. I haven't watched this video yet because I want to be as surprised as you guys are. So I want to see if I can have my wits about me while I destroy Verlisify once again. By looking at the signs of this, looks like he's actually going to go to war with this guy, Distant Kingdom, about him proving that the models that they are in fact using are the same. So let's see what Verlisify's got to say about this.
Hey buddy, where did the video go? You know, the one that caused your audience to attack people for saying that Game Freak had to remake the models in Pokemon Sword and Shield?
Well, you have your
It
audience
was
attack
definitely
people.
here, but I'm not seeing it anymore. Maybe there was a problem and there's a reason why you took it down and you posted it. No? Channel hasn't posted anything yet. Okay, maybe it's on Twitter. You know, not everyone uses the community tab. Let's see, we have the uploads for the other videos, so... Oh, looks like you deleted the tweet for that video. However, you're still keeping up false information. As someone who greatly respects Game Freak and has done a large amount of research on the team and games, I'm going to be responding to this thread because all of the models are not new. This has been misinformation. Except, we have this.
Well, it doesn't matter what this says. He's probably going to go into a tirade about how the new translators are proving him right when he proved that the model, that Vaporeon model, was the one used on the Game Boy game and the one that's used on Let's Go Eevee because it's the console, and they are the exact same models, exact same poly counts. He can swap the textures of the model and they match perfectly because their UVs are the same. He actually put them up so they take the same space and their quads and stuff match perfectly. It's because they're the same model. Nobody cares that they're the same model. It's the fact that they said they're new and they're not.
He translated that Pokemon Sword and Shield interview quote, and it says it's not misinformation. Is that why this video is unlisted now? Because the foundation for your video was off of a garbage Google Translate and not an actual translator, like where the original story came from? It says Pokemon Sand Moon.
Yeah, it does say Pokemon Sand Moon, but Google Translate is fairly accurate. I use Google Translate for a lot of things, and you might get some weird results every once in a while, but it's been fairly accurate for what I've been using it for, and we're talking long stretches of words that get me the information or the content that I'm looking for, because I watch a lot of content on YouTube from different countries, and I simply can't search for those types of things in English and get what I want. So I have to use Google Translate to type it in, put it in the Google search engine, and find the content that I want to watch. It's good. So if Google Translate said that they are making new models or something along those lines, then they are in fact, well, not they're making new models, but that's what they said. That's what the translation says. So yeah.
And this guy was like, well, it supports my narrative, so I'm going to use it.
You do the same thing too.
From scratch, but not models from scratch. But let's see what Nintendo Life has to say about that.
Alright.
It's fair to say there's a lot of fans looking forward to the upcoming game, Pokemon Sword and Shield, that comes to Switch later this year. Because it's the first mainline game since the 3DS era, people are rightly or wrongly expecting a fair boost in visual fidelity when it comes to the Pokemon visuals.
Well, yeah, we are. It's a new console game. On a home console, it needs to look like one. We've got games like Breath of the Wild, and I think the art style for Breath of the Wild is pretty odd, but it looks good, and it looks better than Pokemon's Sword and Shield. You've got, what's the other one? The Monster Hunter. Very great looking game. Anything Square Enix has put out. Mortal Kombat on the Switch looks better than this game. And we're not saying that the game needs to be hyper realistic. Just the art style that they're choosing is dated. But if they want to keep the art style, then they should at least try to make it look good. This here honestly looks like a 3DS Pokemon game with a different shader on it. And you can tell just by looking at things like the grass, the environment, it all looks the same to me.
Well, that's already wrong because Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are objectively main series games, but let's keep on going. Now,
Okay, while we're on Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, The models in the game, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, are on the Switch. They're already there. So if they got them on the Switch, that means they can port them. That's my cat. They're already on the Switch. They work on the Switch. They already have them ported. They are probably building a new engine. But like I said, 3D models port to engines very well. So I don't know where you're going with this.
An interview with Famitsu has recently caused a stir online, with Polygon reporting that Game Freak is indeed creating new models for Pokemon, except Polygon didn't start this whole thing. That it was actually from the social media post and the Reddit post, and also PokeJungle got in on the action, retranslated it, and it seemed to support everything that was going on. So yeah, cue internet drama, which for once isn't completely unfounded. Looking around the comments on articles or the subject of YouTube videos, debate seems to be solely from the initial translation of the interview, which is often an issue when people are using computer-based translation, such as Google Translate. But even that doesn't seem to be an accurate account of what happened here, because it's not like this dude just translated it, came up with some mistranslation, and then posted it on Reddit and got attention. No, he was covering the Nintendo Everything coverage and summary. So maybe he was going back through the interviews trying to figure out some things about Pokemon Sword and Shield, and then noticed this. With Pokemon Sword and Shield and the need to redo models, they had to make a decision.
Well, I mean, that's still fairly accurate. This is what the translation came up with, that they need to redo models. Maybe they have to redo some models. Of course, by that, they probably mean just remake a Pikachu and Eevee model and then slap the rest of them in like they usually do. I think Pikachu is probably the only Pokemon in every Pokemon game that gets a completely new 3D model because, well, they rather do that for Pikachu than cat jumped on my back. Oh my God, cat jumped on my back. Oh, that hurt. That hurt. That's staying in. Oh my God. Oh, okay. I forgot what I was talking about. That's something with this. All right, Sword and Shield models they need to remake. I honestly don't know where I was going with that. Where was I going with that? Something about Pikachu remaking Pikachu. Oh yeah, they probably only remake Pikachu models. Maybe Eevee now, but that's it. The rest of them they literally just slap in simply because they want to give those two Pokemon more animations. So they need to redo models, probably. They probably can't get the Pikachu and Eevee models to do what they want.
So the need to redo models also isn't like this new thing from a mistranslation or something. We have this from Nintendo Everything, which covers Famitsu interviews regularly and has them properly translated. So this is back from June, so a month old. We figured that it would be worthwhile getting a professional human translation service to translate the quote again and see what we get back. Now, PokeJungle already translated it, but I mean, if we just keep getting more and more translations to figure out what's going on, that seems like a good thing. So the excerpt we picked was one immediate.
Well, I mean, the best thing they can do is get Nintendo of America to release a statement about this, but no one's doing anything about it. Masuda, I think it was him, came out and said a statement that they're committed to the decisions that they made for the game, and that's it. But no one else is coming out and saying anything. So this is all we got. Interviews from Japanese websites that people are putting in the Google Translate or whatever translator that they're using and putting it back out there. So if there is a miscommunication anywhere, it's coming from the top. Nintendo of America is not saying anything. They know about this game, and we're still here. We're still making threads like this or videos like this because nobody really knows what's going on. All we have are these translations, and like you said, there are a bunch of translations, and a lot of these translations are going to be incorrect depending on the software that they use, and we can't be mad at anybody about that. I mean, you do it yourself. You'll make 18 videos about the same thing, spreading misinformation and not really adding anything to it. So I mean, this is fine. Anybody that looks at a translation just assumes that as long as you understand what they're trying to say, you can put something together. But nobody's looking at this like, I mean, the guy complained about Sand Moon.
Immediately following the answer that explained not all Pokemon would be introduced in the new game. Omori, Masuda and I discussed this issue in great deal. Even for Pokemon Sun and Moon, it was quite a difficult situation to make it possible to bring every Pokemon into the game. Now that we are moving to the Nintendo Switch and remaking the models from scratch, professional translation service.
It doesn't matter if it's a professional translation service or not. They are telling you that they are making the models from scratch. I usually don't trust anything big business has to say because they're going to say whatever they need to get a sale. It's like talking to a car salesman and them being completely honest with you. No, it's not that car salesman's job to get you the best deal or to try to save you money. He's going to try to get as much money as he can out of you so he can buy a boat or whatever it is that they do at car dealerships. I know that's not what car dealerships do. They're pretty nice people, but they have a bottom line that they're trying to get done. Even with customer service, you have to lie to the customer to reassure them. That's all they're doing here, lying to us to reassure us. These models, that Vaporeon model, the one that's on a Switch game right now, is the exact same one from the 3DS. Guess what? That Vaporeon model is the exact same Vaporeon model from Pokédex 3D. How I know? Because I got the software on my 3DS. It's the exact same ones, and you're sitting here looking at it and saying, well, they have to remake them from scratch. No, they're not doing that. And even for Pokemon Sun and Moon, I mean, it wasn't that big a deal when they did it for Pokemon X and Y, right? All they did was make a handful of new Pokemon and put them over. This exact same thing. And the game worked fine. These models already exist. Like I said in my last video, that Pidgeot model that they used for the new ones, it's been around for about 10 years now. It's fine.
We had to make some kind of choice. That said, despite the limitations on the Pokemon that can be brought into the game's wild area story and other content is quite rich.
Okay, I'm curious on this thing here, the limitation on a Pokemon that can be brought into the game. What limitations are there? All of these Pokemon are relatively low poly and don't take up that much space. I mean, I think a Pokemon might take up, what, 300 kilobytes? Like maybe 3.14 megs if I'm like putting everything together. Those are relatively small files. And even if you have, what, let's say 300 of those Pokemon at 3, I'm going to do some quick math here. It might take a while. You could probably fit, what, 3, 6, 9, 12, 30. You can fit a lot of them, actually. You're looking at about 300 models a gigabyte. I think that's severely underestimating it, but about 300 models a gigabyte. So if we say there are 900 Pokemon, we'll say 1,000 for the sake of it. You're looking at 3.5, at most 4 gigabytes of space for Pokemon models. The cartridge for a Switch game is most likely 50 gigabytes. And just keep in mind that everything else isn't really all that big. The Pokemon data itself is probably taking up the majority of the space that they're putting on a game. So if this game ends up being, 12.5 gigs out of, say, 50, 4 gigs of that are Pokemon models. Where's the rest of the other 38 gigs that could be fit on the card? I mean, there's no limitations to putting these Pokemon over unless they just don't want to put them in. I mean, that's probably about right. They just don't want to do the work, and that's the problem.
I believe that players will understand that when they play the game. And I think that's another big statement right here. All these idiots complaining about the game and just only wanting to be right despite what the reality is about it, they haven't played the games. And
holy shit, did you hear the irony? Wow. So he's still calling people out of their names, and I guess this is how he gets his point across. But the irony there, or the pot calling the kettle black, or there's another one that I can't think of right now. Yeah, those two.
And it seems like they're just blinded by their own hatred or negativity, so they can't even value.
What is this hatred or negativity? I know I keep stopping, but I just have to say something. Like, what is this hatred or negativity? Like, he's the only one being negative. Like, nobody. And I've watched a lot of videos on this subject already. but nobody else is calling anybody names. No one is attacking Game Freak. No one. Everyone's being boisterous. Yes, you have to be if you want to get change in something that you love. But no one is making threats, calling people names, or anything. It's literally just Verlisify doing this. He's the only one calling people names here, and it's impressive that he thinks that he's right. That, I mean, Verlisify is probably the type of person that if the government told you that they're going to stop killing kittens, you'd probably believe it. Even though the government's still going to continue to kill kittens because they know this guy is going to come out and say, the government's not killing kittens. They said so.
For what we have. Watch the most recent Pokemon Sword and Shield trailer. It's the best looking Pokemon game we've ever had. That cannot be argued.
I agree with that.
This is a step up in quality and gameplay and is going to bring more to the table than any other main series Pokemon game.
Okay, I'm just going to stop it right there before he just starts saying a bunch of things. Is this the best looking Pokemon game that we've ever had? Yes. But that's because it's on a home console and they can do more. But that's not necessarily saying much because the game looks exactly the same way that the 3DS game looks without that sprite shader that they've been using. I think they actually have some kind of software that pixelizes the pixels on the models to make them look like sprites just in 3D. And they're not using whatever that program is. It's probably just a shader. Like shaders get really advanced. I've seen some, and I know a person who does the same rendering style that Pokemon does, and it's literally just that. It pixelates it. So they probably haven't even repainted textures. They just go into the game. The game does it like that and go from there. But to give them all this credit, like, you know that time when the Wii U came out and people were congratulating Nintendo for making an HD game console, despite we've had HD gaming for like the last 15 years before that with the PS3 and the Xbox 360. That's honestly what this is. He's like, well, Pokemon are making good games now. Well, they should always be making good looking games. Monster Hunter on the 3DS looked great. So, man, this is hard.
How is anyone against that because of a tree? I don't even know. Firstly, if you've seen the Google Translate version to these answers, you'll instantly notice the difference in quality. Now, we still don't speak Japanese, but the translation received seems to back up the original report by Polygon and PokeJungle, because he said he translated again. You know, this is not...
Well, yeah, that's because Google Translate doesn't completely suck. It doesn't. Google Translate will get you what you need to know. You can have a conversation with somebody in Google Translate. Yes, things will be in slightly broken language for whoever speaks it, but you understand what it is that they're trying to say.
New news, in fact, it's already a month old. Many fans haven't read this Famitsu article, which is why I've decided to do some new translations and hopefully share most of the thought process behind Pokemon Sword and Shield. And then right here, he goes on to say that since the hardware was changing for the next games, they had to remake all of the models. That's it. You know, which could mean that they had to rework all the 3DS models properly to work on the Switch. Now that is like a nice little thing to add on to it. Maybe not from scratch, but this does say from scratch.
Well, there's something about that. You can't just take a 3D model from one engine and put it into another one. You probably can't even take one 3D model from the same engine and put it into the same engine without there being really weird stuff. Like, let's say you updated your engine. It might break your models. I'm doing something with Unity 3D right now, and we tried to pull something from a previous Unity 3D project, and it was completely unusable. So that does happen. Maybe they said, okay, well, we can't just take this 3D model from this and put it in this, which isn't something that a 3D modeler should ever be doing. Or a programmer or whoever compiles the game should just know not to do that. And you will have to actually take some effort to redo something to make sure that model can work. But they're still probably the exact same models. They're not going to remake 800 Pokemon models. They're probably not even going to do 400. That's just too much work. They're going to use the same ones, change anything that might need to be changed, maybe fix something that might need to be fixed. And like I said, if they're making new 3D models, it's probably for Pikachu and Eevee. Like, that's it.
However, it's work is work. That people that are like, Game Freak has no excuse to have the same animations and same everything because it's the same thing that's been used since Pokemon X and Y.
That's true.
But if they had to rework the models, that's work. That's unavoidable work. That's also not Game Freak's fault for not future-proofing the games or anything, because they
How is that not Game Freak's fault for future-proofing their own games? They're the ones making the games. You do everything absolutely necessary to minimize the work. Do you know what an MVP is in terms of mobile games? It stands for a minimum valuable product or whatever, or something like that. It means you want to do the most amount of work possible for the most amount of return. So for something like this, the Pokemon models already exist. All they have to do is the least amount of work and put them into the game. That's it. Now, the thing that they probably didn't realize was that they didn't know how hard it was going to be to transfer their engine to new architecture. That's probably what happened. They thought that they could just slack off, make this game, and it'd be fine. And then when they go to put it on the Switch, it'll work. They probably realized that their database that they've been using to make these games doesn't work for this hardware, this architecture, this whatever. And now they had to rebuild it. That's probably what happened. That's almost positive. That's probably what happened. They tried to do that and it didn't work. And now they're scrambling to try to put something together. And the only way to do that is to cut out half the Pokemon from the game. That's the only other thing I can think of.
Can't predict what the Nintendo Switch is going to be like before the Nintendo Switch even exists. Actually, I scrolled down here and there was a good comment from this guy. Thanks for retranslating. This is actual journalism, a rare thing nowadays. While I completely agree with that, I do feel like there was a bit of like misrepresentation, you know, not calling Pokemon Let's Go main series games, and also kind of like with the Polygon being more weighted, even though there's other outlets that are covering this. Either way, from what I can see, these new models are definitely based on previous ones that have served us well for 7 whole years. But that doesn't mean they didn't need an overhaul. Here's a quote from Reset Era. Updating your engine so it uses modern physics, modern shaders, better animation solutions, different kind of lighting, etc. requires you to check every single old asset you are importing. That's unavoidable.
Yeah, I said
maybe
that.
poly count needs to be changed. Maybe the rigs are acting funky. Maybe textures don't work well with new lights. Maybe all the new materials for every creature need to be made. There's a ton of work that is oftentimes solved by just remaking the damn thing.
Yeah, that's actually a fair point. A lot of people think that it's easy to just edit something, change something, and make it work. When in reality, you're actually doing way more work to actually make this pre-existing thing that you had to work with your new thing. So in reality, you simply just remake it. But the thing is that we're saying is that these models already exist on this hardware in Let's Go Eevee. They already exist on the Switch. That's what we're saying. So because these things already exist on the Switch, them saying that they can't get it to work like this post suggests, maybe they can't get it to work, but they already do work on existing hardware, on a game that they sold, on a game that they made as a, I don't want to say a cash grab, but as a holdover game while they worked on this game. When they made Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu, they were working on Sword and Shield. They would have had the exact same issues that they were going through with Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, since those were the first games on the Switch. So there's no reason to assume that they are having any issues with these assets. Maybe they're trying to be ambitious and they changed their engine slightly and it broke something. It happens. I have had it happen plenty of times with Unity 3D, where just a slight update or anything can just break your entire project. It happens. But there's no reason for anybody to assume that that's what happened here, because they already exist on the Switch. We know how these models look on the Switch. Everything already exists on the Switch. Mega Evolution. Are Z moves in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee? I don't think they are. No, I don't think they are. I didn't play through Let's Go Eevee completely. I played like one session with it and that was it. But Mega Evolutions are intact. They removed held items. What I'm saying is they made that game really quickly. They made it quickly. So if they would have had any problems, they would have had problems with the Let's Go games and not this. But he's right about that. You just remake it in order to have problems.
But then people just think they know everything about graphic design because they can open up a RIP model in Blender and play around with it for a bit, which leads to tons of misinformation like this. Like, I've seen posts like this getting thousands of upvotes even though it's complete nonsense.
I mean, I do use 3D modeling a lot. I am a professional graphic designer, actually, and I know my way around certain things. Like, this is clearly a viewport rendering, and this here is the composition that they went through. Same thing, a viewport, and this here's the final render. Same thing here, viewport, final render. This here is most likely a final render. This one here has more composition on it, but yeah, you can change a lot of things just by doing this. I can take any of these models and just change texture settings and change completely how it looks. And that's just the joy of 3D modeling. You can, this missile right here, you can throw a shell shader, a toon shader, I think is what they call it. You can throw a toon shader on this here, and it won't look like it's out of Call of Duty, and it'll look like it's out of an anime. Your chess pieces, you can, like, there's a lot of things you can do with shaders, and you can do an infinite amount of things with shaders. And even the same thing here with Pokemon. This here is their sprite shader that they have, which is why they look. And this tree right here in the background looks like the exact same one that's in Sun and Moon. That's fine. They have assets that they made, and they can use the assets in any way that they want. But we're looking and saying, why does the new game look like this still without that toon shader or their sprite shader? I'm gonna call it a sprite shader. But why does it still look like this? This tree. Why does this tree right here look like the same one that was in that Zelda 64 type open world field? You know, it's the exact same thing. Same thing here. So there's a lot of things you can do with shaders, and I don't think he quite understands that.
You're comparing a still to a game that needs to upgrade from a different engine and a different console. Like, look at that rocket. Yeah, you can make things look fancy. You know, textures and rendering technology don't mean the models are brand new. Open your eyes.
That's
and
true.
This was on a post specifically saying that it was a mistranslation or a straight up lie from Game Freak. But yeah, animate the fire in that rocket, design the engine for that motion blur, and then make it wiggle like a snake for the PS5. You can't do that.
Yes, you can. You can absolutely do that. That's what engines are supposed to do. This here, the same thing. You could throw some Photoshop on there. You put a new emitter. Maybe they change the way the emitter look. But there's a lot of things that you can do. You can have low quality renders and you can have high quality renders. There are a ton of things that you can do. But just because you take something like this one here, I honestly don't like this image here with the room, because this here really is just a viewport view and not a final render. Like, this one here is a final render, but so is this one. All you have to do is change the lighting, use more appropriate lighting, use more different things, and go from there. Like in Blender, if you used they have like two internal renders, the other one being Cycles. Cycles is the one that you want to render in, or you can use RenderMan, which is what Pixar uses. But if you use Cycles, you can get something that looks really good like this. Or you can use a generic renderer and get something like this. With 3D Studio Max, you have V-Ray, which is an industry standard renderer that a lot of companies use to render things like the Avengers movie. They probably use another one. There's one called an iRay now, I think is what it's called. But there's a bunch of different renderers out there that you can use. But not all renderers are created equally. Some are better than others, and those renderers cost a lot of money. So, yeah, options.
Stuff like that's impossible. So yeah, you can make something look good in a still, but actually having the rig work, especially something as complex as a creature and monster that's going to have multiple animations for multiple interactions that's going to have, while
I'm letting him finish his thought first.
Also doing all these other things for upgrading it into a new system. No, it's not like, wow, it looks the same, therefore Game Freak's lying, and this is a mistranslation.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, you can have a still image. I feel like I have to say this because I don't think he knows either, but a render is literally, or an image, a movie, It's literally thousands of rendered images. That's what it is. The computer processes the image and generates a picture file. And it'll do that for however many frames that you have. And you can end up with a folder full of, what's a high number, like 3 million pictures? It can be that high, you know, at what, 60 frames a second? Are movies in 60 frames? Movies are between 24 and 30. You do have some that are 60, but we'll say 60 frames because we're talking games here. You can have a movie file or just a folder full of images for your movie, and it would have rendered every single frame in a separate image. You then take those images, those pictures that the renderer created, and you put them into a video editing program, and you compile all those images and it plays it out in one movie, because that's how movies are made. They're not simply just somebody pointing a camera at something. When you put those files in the computer and work on them and export them, you want to export individual frames, because you're going to have to do something called frame scrubbing, which means looking at every individual frame to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to. If it's not, you can either paint the frames or the series of frames to make sure they work, or you go back to the program you're animating in, you re-render it, see if you catch it, fix it, go from there. But that's how that works. So it doesn't matter how complex the creature is in said frame. It will render that creature in an image. The difference between a video game and a movie is video games are technically in real time. It's rendering everything as it needs to happen. It's reading a playback file for animations. That's not hard for the engine to do, because if your character is, say, 5,000 polys, it's not having to work hard. The system can render that. So the system can render, say, 6 Moltres on the screen at the same time, because between all three of them is only 30,000 pixels. But Nintendo, or not Nintendo, Game Freak doesn't know how to optimize these things, right? Which is the reason why you can crash a system if you put 6 Moltres on the same screen. Whereas we have games like Mortal Kombat, where characters literally have trillions of triangles making up their entire body, and the game runs at a smooth 60 frames per second while having these very impressive backgrounds. That game too is also running on the Switch, by the way, and it has no performance issues. I think they said they put the game down at 30 frames per second. I don't know how true that is because I haven't looked into it. But you can see the difference in development quality here. Moltres lags the system. And Moltres only has, what, maybe 6,000 polys. Johnny Cage and Raiden can exist on the exact same screen and can have 2 trillion polys each, not including the advanced lighting, all the particle effects, the backgrounds, the everything. A scene on most average game can support probably 50 trillion pixels on screen before you even start noticing frame rate drops. And we're talking like maybe 2 or 3 frames from 60. Like, it's like the hardware is a lot more powerful than it is that you're giving it credit for. And the problem is that Game Freak just isn't optimizing it right, because they never had to.
That's how we lead to problems like this, you know? Congratulations. Your blind hatred exposed you as the fraud that you are. I couldn't be happier about it. Also, I couldn't be happier for the idiots that actually think that this mobile game is better than Pokemon Sword and Shield, downloaded their games, and now their phones are being tracked by China. That's also something to take into consideration when you're looking at a game that isn't even better than a Pokemon game.
What does your phone being tracked by China has to do with anything? The U.S. government tracks your phone. They're probably watching you right now through your webcam on your laptop. Now, not all for conspiracy theories or anything like that, but the government has to know what its people are up to. So it probably absolutely does that. How else do they plan raids on people if they're not watching us? I'm not going into that. But yeah, you like going back to the, let's go back here a little bit. Going back to this screenshot here, where this Chinese game has the fire coming out of Charizard's mouth. Again, it might not be 100% accurate, but then you look at the Dynamax version of Charizard, and that's super small, but the image should be around somewhere. The flyer is spawning from this circle right here. Charizard's mouth is down here. How is that even still possible? Why is this still a thing? Like in my last video where I showed you that Toucannon, a new Pokemon using their new mechanic Z moves, doing Supersonic Sky Strike, defaulted back to its idle animation. When I saw that for the first time playing the game, I was like, how is this still a problem? Here, we've got the animation where this is the exact same animation from the same game. It's just like they're reusing the same assets, and nobody has a problem with that. Nobody cares that they're reusing the same assets. The problem is that they are telling us that they are creating new things, and they're not. That's the problem. People are not going to be able to get to use their favorite Pokemon in this game because we're being told that they are adding more expressions. They are making the graphics better. When we have Charizard here shooting fire from what? His wing? I mean, Charizard's fire comes out his mouth. It's been like that everywhere. Charizard's fire comes out of his mouth in Pokken Tournament, in every anime, in every, what's the other one? Super Smash Brothers. Yeah, fire comes out of his mouth. People think dragons. They think fire coming out of the mouth. Yeah, it's a lot easier for them to just put a spawn point where the attack comes from because that requires less work. Genius Sonority wouldn't have done this. We've seen them work on multiple games. Pokemon Battle Revolution, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, Pokemon Stadium. It's the exact same thing here. I don't know who developed Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. I'm pretty sure Game Freak made them. But even Game Freak cared enough back then to do that. And here, this is what we got. It's like they're still making Pokemon games like they're on the Nintendo DS, where the sprites don't animate. They are static sprites. So yeah, you generate an attack somewhere from on the screen and you make the attack do a thing. When you're dealing with 3D models, you don't have to, you have to deal with that. We're being told that, well, we're not making another Pokemon Battle Revolution or a Pokemon Stadium like game because the 3DS games are going to be like that. Well, if they're going to be like this right here, like this right here, Pokemon Sword and Shield,
when you're looking at a game that isn't even better than a Pokemon game, that's the Pikachu model that everyone is praising for being better than what we see out of Pokemon. That this small indie Chinese developer that stole all the assets. So
well, yeah, they stole the assets. That's fine, but nobody's praising this Pikachu model. It's the exact same Pikachu model that Game Freak has access to. The things that people are saying are, wow, a Chinese developer can add more expression to a Pokemon model than this. Now, keep in mind, Pikachu is, I don't want to say it is the most popular Pokemon because they made it that way, but Pikachu's like their flagship Pokemon. Like, if they want to have any Pokemon represent the company, it's not going to be Pidgey. It's not going to be Squirtle. It's not going to be Zangoose or Butterfree or Avalugg. It's Pikachu. Pikachu is the one Pokemon that they want people to associate Pokemon with, and they can't even give Pikachu the proper attention to animations. Now, keep in mind, Pikachu is the only Pokemon in the franchise now that actually speaks his dubbed name, which I personally have a problem with because they should do that for all the other Pokemon too. Actually, Eevee might do it now too. I haven't played anything with Eevee in the new games yet to know for sure if Eevee does it or not. But even then, that's lazy. Every other Pokemon just makes a sound, but Pikachu still says his name. It's cool that they're allowed to do that, but it's really out of place and really breaks the immersion of the game because they do that for the anime. So why can't they do it for this? They already have space allotted to sound files, so why not do it? The whole thing is lazy.
Had to do pretty much no work is just shovelwaring their gacha game,
yeah.
Because this gacha game wasn't made from scratch as a Pokemon game. It's actually just like a template gacha for like a Digimon game and other gachas from China.
Well, it doesn't matter what the template is for a game. The Pokemon Company literally sold you Pokemon Ultra Sun and Pokemon Ultra Moon like they were new games. The only new thing in there was what? A surfing thing with Mantine and Rainbow Rocket? I couldn't even finish the game because there was nothing new. I didn't want to play through Sun and Moon again. It was horrible the first time I had to play through that game. I didn't want to do it again. All they had to do was just make it like Pokemon Crystal, Emerald, or whatever. But no, they made it 2 separate games. So they could have at least made it a sequel. They didn't even do that. You know what game they did do that with? Pokemon Black and White 2. The only games that actually were sequels that were deserving of 2 different games. We didn't get any of that. So it's not like this company here is also releasing shovelware. Shovelware is all Pokemon has ever made. But we accept it because it's a franchise that we like. We accept it because it's always been like that. Nobody was required to, I mean, even when Pokemon Crystal came out and they attempted to redo all the Pokemon sprites so they can animate them a little bit, they still did that for like what, 251 Pokemon? Pokemon, not Fire Red, Leaf Green. What's the other one? Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I gotta get that game again. But those games animated every Pokemon sprite, made them all follow you. I believe Black 2 and White 2, one of the newer ones before the 3DS ones. All the sprites were animated. They went in and drew those. A lot of times, it's just them bouncing up and down and whatnot. But they put the effort in. Where's the effort here? If this is how it's going to go, then they need to go back to sprites. Just being honest with that.
These knockoffs. So almost none of this is original except for the animations, and the original animations are broken like this. Pikachu's tail is clipping through its body.
Yeah, but you're focusing on the wrong things here. You should be giving this Chinese developer credit for doing something a Pokemon company isn't. That's what you should do. Guess what? Pokemon Masters, the new Pokemon mobile game that's coming out, is going to look just like this. And they're probably going to have the exact same animations and stuff that's going on. You know how I know that? Because when I saw the Charizard and the Pidgeot in the trailer, they were literally doing the same auto animations that they've been doing in the 3DS games. It's not good. It's not good.
It has sliced itself in half.
Yeah, it does like it hurt.
Tail with that, and then the more you watch it, the more gross it gets. The ears are completely broken. You know.
No, the ears aren't broken.
That's not quality at all. Pikachu's tail also doesn't wiggle, so they added wiggle to make Pikachu's tail more lively and expressive.
Yeah,
but that literally is not how Pikachu works. So
how do you know how Pikachu works? It's a fictional mouse. They're going to do things that they can to express this. Pikachu's ears moving back and forth, they're not going to break the model. Creatures' ears do move in real life. And even then, this is up to artist interpretation. That's all it is. They can choose to do it any way they want to. But the thing is the Pokemon company can't absolutely do this. They just choose not to.
They are breaking all the rules and breaking the models. Pikachu's shoulder is clipping into itself. So that is an impossible thing to accomplish in a Pokemon game if you actually want quality, because this is not quality. And then the attack itself is actually just terribly programmed as well. That the Electro Ball doesn't fly across the field and then hit the Magnemite. It has the same attack animations that we see in the Pokemon games that people are hating anyways.
Well, attacks like that have a spawn point. I don't know if you've looked at sprites for 2D fighting games, how when Ryu does his Hadouken, he's not shooting a Hadouken from his hand, even if one appears in the sprite. What's happening is the sprite, the animation, the thing that they drew is doing the motion for the Hadouken, and I'm doing the motion for the Hadouken right now. You just can't see it. But on that last frame before the Hadouken fires, they might actually draw it in the sprite just so the artist or the person doing the programming has a visual representation of where the Hadouken is supposed to spawn from. And then the Hadouken disappears from the sprite completely. And in place of where the Hadouken was, the game loads an object. It loads the Hadouken object into memory so it can shoot it. Now, from the terms of you, the player, playing it, it looks like it's just one fluid thing. But what's actually happening is the Hadouken doesn't exist physically while he's doing the animation for it. And then when the animation calls for it, because it has to call the object, the Hadouken object, before it fires it off, it calls it in, it loads it into memory, and it fires it off, and then it becomes an object that gets fired at the opponent. The same thing in Call of Duty. When you're firing a gun, it's not actually shooting real bullets. What's actually happening is it's spawning an invisible, I'm just gonna say a plane. It's a laser or something that extends all the way in front of the gun across the entire map. Maybe it draws the distance out, but it's really fast. And if you look at it, it will look like actual lasers. And anything that's in that path for that laser will hit the player. So bullets aren't actually coming out of the guns in Call of Duty. It's just shooting an invisible laser that simulates the bullet. And it checks, is there a bad guy in the front of this laser? If it does, damage the bad guy. Now the game is going to put muzzle flash, that's a separate object that the game calls into memory while you're firing the gun, to give the impression that it's shooting bullets. Again, that's not what's actually happening. Here, if I'm pretty sure you're going to play it.
Oh, it's just tons of hypocrisy.
Okay, he's not going to play it. But what's actually happening here is the game is going to do all the animations to make it look like the electro ball might actually load in on the animation, just so it's visually there, so you can see the buildup. And then when the game goes to fire it, it will unload it from wherever it was on Pikachu, and then call in the actual electro ball object that gets fired at the opponent. These things aren't as complex as they look.
And if you look at the comment section, people are like, wow, I'm gonna play this. Wow, this is better than Pokemon Sword and Shield. I'm happy you got a virus. I hope you get hacked. That way we won't have to hear about your nonsense anymore for thinking that this is better than this.
Nobody is saying, I love Corviknight, by the way. I can't wait to get that Pokemon and try it out. But nobody is saying that that Chinese game is better than this game. No one has ever once said that. Everyone is saying, however, the animations on that game are a lot better than this. Do you know how flying works? I'm gonna just mute you for a second, but do you know how flying works? Because let's go back. This here, that's not how flying works. Flying actually requires a lot of speed, lift, a bunch of physics in order to work. But again, that's just how they make creatures fly. And I'm pretty sure if I saw that thing on the map and it wants to turn around, it will just turn around 180 degrees and just be not good to look at.
Look at how amazing, like this scene is absolutely incredible for a Pokemon game.
I like how you say it's incredible for a Pokemon game. But let's break this down real quick. We have a semi-realistic environment, a semi-realistic structure, a semi-realistic environment, and the 3DS model of Golurk. You see the problem here, right? This here doesn't visually match this. You see this here? This blue line that I'm tracing with the mouse? They drew the texture on. Here, they drew the textures on. That's not what you do anymore. But here, this structure here, they didn't draw the textures on. They didn't do that. Duskull. That's what that is, right? Duskull? Yeah. Again, where is the visual similarities between this and this? I believe that's a Ghastly or Mashana. I'm gonna say Ghastly. But then again, where's the similarities here? Golurk should be detailed textured at least as much as this. This doesn't look good. This here looks like they just grabbed an asset from the Unity store, plopped it in, and just put their Pokemon models in. We've seen games that look like this. They look like asset flip games, and they don't look good. This here doesn't look good. The art style has to absolutely match. Now, if you removed Golurk, I don't know why I'm covering it up like you guys can see it, but if you remove Golurk, Duskull, and Ghastly from here, and put in the models from Detective Pikachu, or the Golurk from Detective Pikachu, he would absolutely fit in a lot better than this, because the Golurk from the movie is actually very detailed in his texture map. Hell, even anything from Pokken Tournament would look good here on this shader, because these are highly detailed models. This here is a low poly model against, I mean, this is low poly too, but you probably can't even tell by looking at it because of how detailed the texture map is.
But no, something that stole animations from Pokken Tournament, something that stole models, stole everything else, and is just, yeah, something that is like just slapped together.
I mean, you're so fixated on things being stolen. How about you talk about the money that Game Freak was going to steal from people if they release the game in this state? Let's talk about that.
As a crappy Chinese knockoff stolen IP game is better, you're delusional.
Nobody's saying it's better.
There's no defending this game. There's no saying that any part of it is better than Pokemon Sword and Shield.
But yeah, the animations are absolutely better than what they are in Sword and Shield. You remember the Flareon ass shake animation that it had in Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2? And how it appropriately used that animation for certain attacks? Whereas in this game here, a double kick is simply just a model jumping up and down twice with a foot appearing over him. You remember the video that somebody made showing all the double kick animations from all the Pokemon and how overly exaggerated and detailed they were? And it just added personality? Where's that at? And I assume that Game Freak made Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. So there's no excuse for this.
It's just amazing how people have become this way. I'd
Yeah.
like to dedicate this video to all the idiots out there that linked me Distant Kingdom's trash content, calling me an idiot, a liar, saying I'm spreading misinformation,
You are.
that this was proven wrong, and my blind fanboyism, you know. I'm a Game Freak apologist, and I just need to accept reality right now.
Yeah?
Yep. Congratulations. Y'all played yourself.
Alright, so apparently we played ourselves, but what he doesn't realize is he just got destroyed by a guy that is literally unknown on YouTube who gets like 3 views on his video. Like, for you 3 guys who watch this video, show him this video. Show him my other one too, just so I can see what he has to say about it. He's probably not going to say anything about it. You know, I'm too small time for him. But this just goes back into the thing, you know. Where was I going with this? Oh, right. I was going to say something about the Loch Ness Monster because it's relevant, I promise. Let's say the Loch Ness Monster is real, right? Let's say UFOs are real. I mean, UFOs are real. But for the sake of this example, let's just say that they are real, right? Like, we saw one. We saw the Loch Ness Monster. We saw Bigfoot. We saw all those things that nobody can prove. Let's say all of this is real, but the government is not worried about it. Why? Because nobody is going to believe the guy who has frazzled hair, smells like a dog, and argues with people. That guy could be 100% right about everything. There's absolute 100% truth to everything he's saying. But nobody's ever going to believe that guy because he's crazy. And the government doesn't have to go out of their way to cover things up, waste their resources to cover things up, because they know as long as that crazy guy is talking about those things, nobody's going to believe him. So why do they have to work harder, right? It's the same thing here. As long as Verlisify, with his 440,000 subscribers, keeps making these videos defending the things that Game Freak, you know, is doing, then Game Freak is not going to ever want to go out of their way to fix anything. And it's a shame, because it's really doing us as a community a disservice, because we want a good product, and we should want a good product. You know, nobody goes to a restaurant and eat bad food. You complain about it, and if they don't do anything about it, you complain louder so other people can hear you. And then once other people start complaining and they start losing money because nobody's eating at their restaurant, then they're going to come out and say, oh, wow, okay, we should have listened to that guy. It's the same thing with car dealerships. I keep bringing it back up to that. But if you show them that you're not willing to back down, then they cave into your demands. Maybe they're trying to sell you that truck that you want at $72,000. And all you have to do is say, I don't want it, and walk away. And I guarantee you, 3 or 4 days later, they're going to call you back and offer it to you again at 62. Maybe you take it, maybe you don't. You tell them you're going to buy another truck, and they say, okay, 58,000 lowest offer. And then you take it. You got a truck from 47,000 or 74,000 to 58,000. You know, that's what you have to do with these companies. You have to show them that you mean business. And the thing that matters is their bottom line. Companies live or die by their stocks, by their investors. And if their investors feel that their fans are not being treated right, they pull their money out and they lose their money. They're not going to let that happen. These companies want to make money. They are for profit and they will do whatever it takes to make money. So don't let a person like Verlisify tell you that this is not worth pursuing, because it absolutely is. So I hope you all did enjoy this video. I did not mean to make it an hour long again, but I go on these really long rants and this happens. I hope you all enjoy your day. Share this video, and peace.